Hey, welcome everybody. We are here. It is Friday, October 2nd, and what an exciting week. We had a debate the other night, and it was rather interesting, wasn't it, James?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, needless to say, a little bit of fireworks and lots of different opinions on it. I saw some of the, actually, I saw a lot of the polls, and pretty much it seemed like most people didn't really change their mind. Pro-Trump before, pro-Trump after, pro-whatever before, they're still the same. And then the people in the middle, the undecideds, didn't really move. But you know which poll surprised me the most? It was the Telemundo poll.
Yeah.
Did you see that? That was, because Telemundo, the owner of that, is so anti-Trump that I was shocked to see 66% Telemundo viewers pro-Trump after the debate and only 34% Biden. That was quite a shock to see that. And me being a fan of Trump, I was quite a pleasant shock to see it. But what do you have to say about things that you witnessed the other night? Or do you want to comment?
Look, here's the thing, and,
Okay.
I'll just say this. There were a couple of things that we learned pretty quickly. We didn't really learn them. There's nothing new, okay? The first thing that we recognize is that our president is a fighter, right? And if he can fight like that, he can definitely fight anybody that comes his way. And he's one that fights for his family, and I believe we are his family in many ways. He looks at us that way, and I very, very much respect the fact that he'll never back down. And it's a very, very good thing, right? And it's something that I've come to very appreciate and love about the president. The second thing that we've learned is that Wallace is a disgrace, right? Which is something we've already known.
Oh, yeah.
He's very left-leaning.
It was obvious. It was pretty obvious.
Yeah, he wants to draw the picture that he's not left-leaning, but he is. He's absolutely left-leaning. It was striking to me that every single time the president went on the attack with respect to some of the issues Joe Biden is perhaps some of the most really embarrassing on, Wallace jumped in and defended him and even gave him time to think about it. If you remember when the president talked to him about the situation with the corruption of his son and the fact that the former vice president allowed him to, really bothered me that Chris Wallace actually continued to refer to former vice president as Mr. Vice President. That's a military title in this nation. That title only belongs to one person, and that's the person who actually occupies the office. I think it was done in a very calculated way. I think it was done in a way to kind of uplift him and project him in a light that he should not be in. I also think it's really interesting that Joe Biden on a regular basis was making statements of how the president failed to do his job, and he did this and he said that and he did this and he said that. Biden talking about all the things that he did to possibly contribute or help to COVID or so on and so forth. Yet when he was asked why he did not call the governors of the states where all of the law and order issues were happening, all the lawlessness was happening, he said, well, I'm not in public office. And what's even more striking than that is that Wallace accepted that answer. I think the president had a lot of very good things to say, although, and I would agree with anybody who says this, even with all the good things that he had to say, all of the noise that was happening because of the way things were being exchanged quieted down the very valid points that the president made, especially as it relates to what he's done to deal with many of the issues that plague the African-American community. When he talked about removing critical race theory teaching, so on and so forth, there was a lot of very good things he had to say. Unfortunately, he wasn't allowed to continue to flesh out those thoughts. And so it was a very concerted effort against the president. It was very obvious that it was. And I'll just congratulate the president because he successfully fought off two people in the debate. He debated two people and not one. And yes, could the president have done better? Absolutely. I think that in any context, you can look back at these situations and say, oh, well, the president could have done better. But it was quite disappointing. And I was very, very disappointed, to be honest with you. I think the person I was the most disappointed with and at one point infuriated by is Chris Wallace. He's not even a quarter of what his dad was, and I wasn't even a really big fan of what his dad was. So pretty embarrassing for the Wallace family, pretty embarrassing for Fox News, and I just think it was a terrible shame. It really was. But, you know, what are you going to do? The thing that we have to pray for the next few debates is that the Lord gives the president enough clarity of mind to be able to talk through the noise and to clearly articulate many of the issues with respect to his accomplishments. And I know that was something you said earlier when me and you had a nice mild conversation about it, but you were talking about the fact that he really wasn't able to articulate many of the things that he could have articulated with respect to his accomplishments. And I would certainly agree with that. That's not anything that that's not anything that I would disagree with. I just think given the circumstances that he was in, he did an admirable job at fighting back. And the way I look at it is this, if he is willing to fight the way he fought with these people in front of 100 million viewers, imagine what he's doing behind the scenes with world leaders that want to take advantage of us and want to destroy the union. So I'm very proud of our president. I love our president. I'm thankful to God for him. And, I'm just appreciative of what God has done through him. And I think that we just need to pray that in the next two debates, some of that clarity will come out. And I am encouraged by this. If you remember the pattern with the Hillary debates, when they happened, I actually thought the first debate between Trump and Hillary was horrible. I thought that Hillary Clinton just owned him in a way initially. And I think that was him just getting his bearing. And then, of course, the next two debates, he just mopped the floor with her, which and that's when the whole "you'd go to jail" thing, that came out, that one line dropper.
Well, she might be going to jail before the next debate with the news that we've seen, the news coming out just the other day. This is exciting. I agree. He's a brawler. There's no doubt about it. He's definitely a brawler. And look, we have a wall that's being built on the southern border of the United States. We have a lot of things that he's had to fight for. Fighting for Israel and these Arab nations in these agreements of normalization that have been coming about. They're just unbelievable, some of these things. And with Chris Wallace, there are a few things. When he asked him, did you only pay $750 in federal tax? I'm thinking, what kind of question is that?
And he lied.
And then the lies that were there. And then the other one, I thought this was hilarious, and it was absolutely ridiculous in comparison, when Trump had mentioned something about the look, if you look at the riots in the cities, they're Democratic-run cities: Portland, Seattle, Minneapolis, New York City. And then Chris Wallace says something to the effect of, "Oh yeah, well, what about all the conservative cities like Tulsa and Dallas?" And I'm thinking, Tulsa and Dallas compared to Minneapolis, New York, Chicago, and I'm thinking, the thing was, there were some pretty absurd things that were happening in there that were ridiculous, but it did. And Biden never was actually able to answer anything that was ever accomplished in his 47 years at all that was any good. And he's fortunate the comment that Biden made about his not wanting to send his kids to a racial jungle. Biden's fortunate that didn't come out. But, you look at this mess, but he's a brawler. Trump is a brawler. And right now we're in a world that somebody's got to fight. And he fights for America, and you see him fighting on all these different fronts. Obviously, the press and fighting the internal fights seem to be far more difficult than the fights against Putin and the other things that are out there externally. But with that, I want to ask you another question. I want to shift gears. You watched the debate. I watched it. We both watched it without commentary through the whole thing. And then we're able to form our opinions. We have a couple of different opinions on how it could have gone, because we had our own little brawl a little while ago. But let's go down this path. What happens to a world, because we know biblically that in the last days, prophetically, because we talk about Bible prophecy on this program, America is not going to be great at that time. So there is a post-Trump time that's coming. Now, I'm not saying Trump's not going to win the election, so I want to make sure our viewers, I'm not predicting that, but there's a couple of different scenarios that we got to play out here. And you also look, this is what God's done, James, the way I look at it, God has used Trump in a remarkable way. Part of it has been really positive. You look at the deal with Israel and the Arab nations. By the way, you and I both agree, this is not the deal of Antichrist. This is not dividing the land. It's not fulfilling those prophecies, but it has set in motion the psychology of those nations, including Israel, for a former covenant that is going to come with Antichrist. And so God used Trump to set the many Arab nations already on that course with Israel. Remarkable to see what's happening there. Then you look at the lockdowns that have happened. I don't believe we'd be in these lockdowns if Trump wasn't president. The reason why is because I believe that the economy was the best it had ever been in the history of the world. And that had to be stopped because more and more people, I mean, listen, when your wallet's doing well, you tend to vote according to your wallet. So that had to be stopped. When Biden and Obama were in office, you had the H1N1. They didn't shut down anything. CNN never talked about it, how they didn't react, how they did a terrible job of covering H1N1. And you look at coronavirus, the real numbers are out of coronavirus with CDC now, and they're remarkably low. So I look, people now, they're willing to shut down the economy, surrender their freedoms. They're willing to enter into a conversation about not being able to buy or sell unless you receive something. You got to wear a mask everywhere. People are already ratting out their neighbors. They are socially shaming them. I believe that God has used Trump to shape the world, psychology, the psychological side and the spiritual side for this kingdom of Antichrist that the Bible does talk about that is going to come. And you look at it and you think, man, even with the defunding the police, get rid of police's good cops are devastated. They're just ruined on the inside, and you look, eventually a police force, a whole different type of police force is going to come in to control that kingdom, that globalist kingdom that's coming. So I look, God has used Trump to pave the way for the kingdom that's coming. However, we could have 4 more great years still at the same time, even though in the future America won't be great again. Do you have anything to say about my comments? Good or bad?
Going back to the debate really quickly, I'll just say this and we'll close it up. I know how much you love the president, right? And so I can understand why you would be disappointed in the way that the debate went, because I think every one of us would have loved to have seen more things come out that the president has done for the country, right? I mean, obviously, here's a great point, and I'll bring this point to you. Biden was forced by his handlers, basically, because that's who they are, his handlers, to say, what about your plan? You have no plan. You have no plan. You have no plan. And I would have loved for the president to have said, what are you talking about, you bozo? What do you mean I don't have a plan? Of course I don't have a plan. I have a record, right? I'm a president. I have a record. I've executed my plan. So you say I don't have a plan. Well, the plan's been executed. And there wasn't a lot of those responses, right? We were hoping for those. We didn't get to see a lot of those, but there's a lot of reasons that contributed to that. Now, going back to the condition of the United States of America, and when we talk about the issue of Bible prophecy and everything that we know concerning what's happening in the Middle East and all of those things, we as a nation really need to get ourselves in the business, especially as believers, in hoping for the best for our nation, right? We know the end game. Listen, as Christians, we know what's going to happen. We know what's going to happen with the upcoming final Antichrist. We know what's happening with these confederation of nations that are coming together. We know what's happening with the globalist movement. We know what's happening on every front and on every level, and we know what, in essence, the end game is going to be. If you're listening to me, if you guys listen to me on the radio, we're all over the country, nationwide. Right now, we're going through the book of Revelation, and I'm talking about that end game. As a matter of fact, I think we're at the section now where I'm talking about the false prophet and that kind of a thing. But what's interesting is, yes, we know the game is Christians, the end game is Christians, but the greatest error we make as Christians is we say, well, we know the end game, so let's just let it all burn to hell because that's where it's going, so we might as well not do anything or have an effect on anything. Well, what I'd like to do, Tom, and I think this is an important discussion, I'd like for us to go back to the discussion we had with respect to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, okay? In 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, in verse 3, we talked about this, right? We know that the Antichrist, this is what the Apostle Paul tells the Thessalonian church. He says the final Antichrist won't appear until Christians are actually raptured. But that's not what I want to focus on in bringing that up. What I want to focus on is the reason that he gives for that happening in verse 6 and 7, I believe, is where he gives the answer to it. And let me bring up my Bible, and I'll try to translate it here directly. And by the way, I think it was last week that there were a few people that actually made fun of me or made a comment over the fact that I used the word Messiah when I was reading something from the Greek New Testament, and all the folks that are out there who never look it up or never research it actually said that was a Hebrew word and I should have never said a Greek word.
I didn't read that comment.
Except for the fact that it's a translation, people. Wake up. It's a translation. It's not even a transliteration. When you see the word Christo in the Greek, the word Christo means Messiah, right? That's exactly what it means. It means Messiah. It's a title. So when I'm translating Christo into what it's supposed to be read or what's supposed to be said, it would mean Messiah. When we say Christ, Christ means Messiah. Okay, so just so that we can get past that, for everybody that was getting all mad at me and making those comments about that, it's like, well, learn the language a little bit, or at least be well read on it. You'll understand exactly why I'm saying it. I'm not, and I know everybody, there's lots of people that call me arrogant and proud and so on and so forth. I'm confident it's the way God made me. So I really shouldn't even be reading a lot of the comments.
You shouldn't.
It just messes with my head. It doesn't really mess with my head. It just gets me all, that's wrong. I want to defend myself, and I really shouldn't. And I just wasted about 2 minutes of our video. Anyway, let me read to you the reason why, because we're losing track here. Let me read to you the reason why the Bible tells us that the Antichrist will not show up. See, listen, watch this. The Antichrist shows up. He confirms or strengthens, as it would say in the original language, right, this covenant, right? And it's a covenant with many. This is why people say it's multiple covenants potentially, right? When that happens, that in essence ensues the real timeline of the tribulation. Right. And that's something that people don't get, because they say, well, the horsemen and the apocalypse, they get in all kinds of weird terminology. This is the timeline, folks. So understand that the tribulation doesn't start without the final Antichrist doing what he's doing, but the final Antichrist coming on the scene and doing what he's doing cannot come on the scene and do what he does until we are raptured. Now, here's the reason why. Okay, and this starts in verse 6 of 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Here's the reason why the Antichrist won't be revealed until we leave. He says this, and I'm using more modern day terminology, right? He says, look, and you all know what is the current restrainer, or the thing that restrains him. I said her. Restrainer. I didn't say, you know what I mean?
I knew
restrainer,
what you
not
meant.
restrain her. Restrainer. So now you all know the very thing that currently is the restrainer of him, so that he will be revealed in his time. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work, but the one now restraining will do so until he is out of the way. Now, who is the restrainer? This is incredibly important, and we got to catch this, folks. The restrainer is the Holy Spirit of God living in the life of the believer. That's the context. Now, if that's the case, then that means Christians, based on the inspiration of the Holy Spirit living inside of their lives, regularly stand for righteousness. That's what it means. I mean, that's in essence what the restrainer is. If you really think about it, I mean, the Holy Spirit living inside of me inspires you, Tom, to stand up for righteousness. As long as we stand up for righteousness, there will never be the completion of the New World Order. It will never happen, because as long as Christians are standing up, that'll never take place. Just like the very thing that's keeping complete and total destruction and anarchy from happening in our nation are believers, because it's the believers that are speaking up. That's why it's particularly heretical when a pastor says that we should not speak up about political issues, or we should not take a stand concerning those things. You, my friend, are not reading the Bible if that's the belief that you have. And so in essence, there is this restraining force. And this is where it comes, whether or not the president is the president of the United States, which I sincerely hope we get another 4 years of him because it's been good for our country. The United States of America is going to be out of the picture in Bible prophecy for one of two reasons. And there's only one of two reasons, right? The first reason is that the United States declines to a point that is so just completely gone that it becomes inconsequential. It's no longer a world power, and it kind of falls away. And you actually do a pretty good job of describing that in one of your books. I don't remember the name of the book, but you did talk about that. I remember reading about that. But then there is this possibility, and this is the one that I hope for. I really do hope for this, especially because I love this country and I love the people of this country, right? My sincere hope is that what ends up happening is that there is a spiritual awakening that takes place, and those that are not walking with the Lord start walking with the Lord. And there's a revival in the hearts of believers, that those that have been mediocre, that have been living a life of mediocrity, will go back and completely rethink everything that they're doing in their walk, that there is a real and true revival. And then when the rapture happens, bam, it's a wrap. It's over.
Yeah.
And that's my prayer. That's my hope.
That I love that. That's my hope too. I mean, because there's different scenarios out there for the collapse of America right now. None of them look pleasant except the rapture. And when so something is going to happen to America. In fact, I'm doing a message this Sunday on this. I'm going to deal with this subject with a lot more detail. But when you look at it, America is a problem because when you look at it from the spiritual side, the demonic side, it stands in the way of the enemy being able to eliminate Israel. He's not going to eliminate Israel. We know that, but he wants to eliminate Israel, wants to eliminate the Jews. America is a huge problem for that.
Yep.
And America being great is also a huge problem for the New World Order, the whole globalist system, Marxism, everything that the left wants, America is in the way of. And Trump, love him or hate him, he stands in the way of these evil things that are one against America and one against Israel. And he stands in the way of that. And so I look at the direction everything is going. Will Trump be reelected? My hope is yes, he will. But at the same time, our greatest hope is in Jesus Christ, and that there would be a great awakening, and that the trumpet would sound and we'd be called home and we'd be raptured out of here. Because after that, all hell is literally going to break loose on this earth.
That's right. Yeah. My goodness, Tom, I don't know if there's much to add to that, bro. And it's something that's like one of those things where you say Selah, right?
Yeah.
You meditate on that for just a second. The reality of how consequential what you're saying is significant enough to put the fear of God in anybody. If you're just willing to sit and think about the gravity of that kind of thing, it is very life-changing.
Yep, it is. Hey, with that, James, let's wrap it up here. We've had a great talk today. And just for the record with everybody out there, James and I had a rather exciting, elevated conversation with each other just before we went on. And you know what? We're still best friends.
Yeah, of course we are. What are you talking about, bro? That's what it's all about, man.
If people are watching us,
I wouldn't have that kind of spirited conversation with you if it wasn't the case. You're supposed to be able to have dragged outs.
What's funny about it is when you see, you're Egyptian. You know how the whole Mideast culture is, and the entire culture over there. Having spirited debates goes with everything. So, and you're still best friends, even family. And so that was a lot of fun.
Normal family dynamic. I don't think when the whole family comes over.
I don't think most people would get that. I think a lot of Americans would have looked at us and gone, "What?" My wife, when we first went over to Israel, she saw two Israelis talking. She thought they were fighting.
Oh, yeah.
It was just a conversation, raised voices and everything.
When we went to Morocco, this was really funny. This is North Africa. It's a Middle Eastern country, North Africa. When we went to Morocco, there was a lady who went with us, and she was our mission secretary at the time, and she was just a know-it-all. She claimed to know everything about the culture my mom and dad were raised in, right? So I think I've got a little bit of a one-up, especially considering the fact I speak the language and everything. So we're sitting at the table, and we're getting to eat. This is in a public restaurant there in Morocco. It actually in Fez. And she says, oh, maybe it was in Casablanca. It was in Casablanca. And she says, James, you're too loud. You need to be quiet. These people are going to start getting irritated with you. And I said, oh, really? You really think so? And then I just belted out with the loudest laugh and he yelled a phrase in Arabic to one of the other guys as though they understood me, and not a soul even looked back. No one even turned their head and looked back. And I looked at her and I said, maybe you ought to rethink your view on what my people do here, okay? You know, because it's very different. We're all very loud, and that's just the way it is. It's kind of a funny dynamic to actually watch.
That is funny. Hey, listen, it's been great time with you today. We have a prophecy conference coming November 8th. It's a Sunday, and it's going all day. We're starting at 8:30 in the morning. It's going all day. We have Don Stewart, Dr. Andy Woods, and David Tal. Pray for David Tal. He plans on being here early for the conference. However, he's coming from Israel, so flight situations are a little bit iffy, but it looks like he will be here, but just pray that he does make that flight. With that, James, people can watch you. I know even today.
I'll be at the conference too, right?
You are kicking off. Well, I assumed you and I. So sorry about that. James is going to be kicking off the conference, and he's going to be there all day, as I will be there all day. But James is going to be he's stepping up to the plate first off. So, yes, it'll be James and myself, and then the other three wonderful teachers that I mentioned. So November 8th, it is a Sunday. There's no tickets, so it's first come if you get there. I recommend people get there early. It'll be hard to find a seat. But with that, we live in exciting times. James, people want to get a hold of you or just watch your videos.
My YouTube channel is Calvary Chapel Signal Hill. You can go there on YouTube. Also, my Instagram is James Cadiz. And so glad to have you go over there. I'm pretty soon going to start a public Facebook page, but in the meantime, you can go to Calvary Chapel Signal Hill on Facebook, and we're also on Twitter and on Instagram, of course. So you can go all those places. And then there is our Real Hope with Tom and James YouTube channel, and that just has everything, just me and Tom together.
Yep.
So
amen. And then right here, Hope for Our Times. You can watch all our videos, including this Sunday night. I want to encourage everybody to watch live. It'll be 4 p.m. West Coast time. It'll be viewable throughout the entire world live, and we're going to be talking about some things. I can't wait. Actually, it's going to be me by myself, and we live in interesting times when Jesus is coming soon. So I can't wait. It'll be a prophecy update I'm doing this week. I'm going to be talking a lot about what's going on right now. With that, great to see you, James. Can't wait till next conversation.
So crazy. Bye-bye.
Bye.